My sister hit me for questioning my personal gift. A few days afterward, her minister phoned me insisting on $10,000. Thus, I brought her low with a single official note. Hi, I'm Sarah, and on the last Easter holiday, my mom struck me on the cheek right before our whole relatives group because I declined to issue another payment to her congregation. But that wasn't the most awful aspect. 3 days on, Reverend Hayes rang me directly, not to check on my condition, but to ask when I'd resume my $15,000 yearly pledge to the construction project. That's the moment I understood my mom had been employing my funds to position herself as the top benevolent household at Faith Assembly Church over the past half-dozen years. I never anticipated that defending myself would uncover a network of deception spanning my whole existence. Yet, the people who taught you to be kind are frequently the ones who exploit your kindness. As I arrived at my parents' residence on Easter morning in Springfield, Ohio, the March breeze still carried a chill from the cold season. Mom had been texting since early dawn about getting there soon to help with the turkey, but I figured it was really about ensuring I appeared presentable prior to the others showing up. My Toyota Corolla seemed modest beside Dad's freshly cleaned F-150 and Emily's shiny BMW sedan, which were already in the rounded driveway. I grabbed the bakery-bought bread from the front seat, fully anticipating Mom to comment on how she'd been awake since sunrise, preparing all items homemade. The entrance was open, as usual during family events, and the scent of honey and spices greeted me the second I stepped in. Soft orchestral tunes drifted from the cooking area, mixed with the noise of pans banging and Mom's commands guiding everyone. The Thompson family house on Oak Avenue hadn't altered much since my youth. The identical cream-colored walls displayed family pictures in matching silver frames. The same deep red flooring that showed every speck of dust. The same elegant sitting room that nobody was permitted to use. Emily's chuckles echoed from the kitchen. She was surely already Mom's preferred assistant, while I was typically assigned to arrange the table or crease linens. Mom appeared in the corridor in her finest Easter attire, a dark green ensemble with ivory fastenings she'd bought just for services that day. Her locks were styled in perfect curls, and her cosmetics seemed expert level. She pulled me into an embrace that felt more like a show than affection, the sort where she could murmur directions without others hearing. Sarah, dear, you seem exhausted. Did you recall to bring the tithing packet I handed you last week? She muttered close to my ear. Reverend Hayes noted the expansion budget is still lacking for this period. I stepped away, a bit confused. Mom, I already arranged the recurring deposit for this year, the initial installment processed last month. I had definitely set up my annual $15,000 contribution to be spread across 4 payments, a practice I'd started 3 years back to handle my charity job income better. Her grin became slightly forced. Well, sure, but there are constantly extra chances to contribute. The congregation is performing such vital activities, and our household has always been recognized for its charity. She grasped my arm and guided me to the cooking space. Come greet everybody. Emily brought the loveliest blooms. The kitchen buzzed with usual chaos. Dad lingered by the brewing machine in his holiday slacks and collared top, his hair still marked from the morning's combing after worship. Emily positioned pale roses in a glass container, her actions exact and graceful. She glanced up when we entered, her smile friendly but strategic. Sarah, great timing. I was just informing Mom about David's advancement. He's set to oversee the whole Midwest area now. Emily's spouse David came out from the storage room with a wine container, his expensive timepiece reflecting light as he offered his hand for the standard courteous grip. Well done, I said, truly sincere, despite the underlying rivalry between Emily and me. That's truly thrilling. Thanks. We're scouting properties in the Springfield Hills neighborhood currently. You know, a place with extra room for when we begin having kids. Emily's palm rested on her slim abdomen in what appeared a practiced gesture. Naturally, we aim to remain near the congregation. Fellowship is incredibly vital. This news delighted Mom. Isn't that fantastic? Emily and David grasped the significance of establishing foundations, participating in something larger than oneself. The implication floated in the atmosphere like the fragrance of turkey. I resided in the city center in a rented studio, attended services sporadically, and at 28, displayed no indications of committing to the kind of partner Mom could boast about at religious events. I occupied myself by sorting the bread in a holder, trying to dodge the familiar hurt of being deemed insufficient. I didn't dispute the worth of fellowship, but Faith Assembly Church had always appeared more like a ladder for social status than a sacred refuge. The group was affluent, mostly Caucasian, and seemed to value philanthropic acts as prestige markers over tangible efforts. Sarah's been very charitable to the church as well, Mom started suddenly, her tone carrying that particular pitch she employed when desiring full attention. Haven't you, sweetie? Reverend Hayes was just sharing how much he values your household's dedication to the expansion project. Something in her wording caused me to hesitate. Your household's duty, not yours. I stared at her, but she had already shifted, examining the turkey in the stove with dramatic attention. Uncle Robert arrived 20 minutes later, with his spouse and my cousin Mia, plus 2 more vehicles of kin I'd only encountered during trips and memorials. The place filled with the joyful clamor from folks who cared for one another, but didn't always enjoy each other's company much. Everyone gathered in the eating area, where Mom had laid the table with her marital porcelain and superior cutlery that required manual cleaning. His prayer was, blessing, expressing gratitude to the Lord for kin, for gifts, and for the chance to return to the group that had provided us plenty. The affirmations echoed across the table, and the discussion moved to beef stew and honey vegetables. Uncle Robert talked about how his gardening enterprise was ramping up for the warmer months. Mia shared news on her medical studies. David led a lot of the conversation, recounting tales about his fresh role and their property hunting adventures. I ended up mostly observing, adding when directly prompted, but sensing oddly detached from the whole occasion. There was a staged element to it all, as though we were each performing parts designated ages ago. Emily was the accomplished child with the perfect union. I was the creative one who hadn't sorted her path yet. Mom and Dad were the society's foundations of charity and honor. Sarah, Mia was inquiring about your position at the charity organization, Mom interjected, pulling me back into the chat. Describe to her the efforts you're making with displaced households. I grinned at Mia, pleased to discuss something I truly cared about. We're developing a fresh initiative to aid families move from short-term shelters to stable homes. It's tough, but truly fulfilling when you witness someone regain stability. That's so commendable, Mia answered. It has to be difficult though, witnessing all that hardship directly. It is, but it's also motivating. Individuals are incredibly tough when offered genuine assistance, rather than mere handouts that satisfy the donor. The statement emerged sharper than planned, and I spotted Mom's sharp stare from across the table. Well, handouts matter too, David commented. I mean without folks ready to donate freely, groups like yours couldn't operate. Definitely, I concurred. I simply believe it's crucial that the donating truly benefits people, rather than just easing the contributors' consciences. An uncomfortable silence descended on the table. Uncle Robert coughed and questioned Dad about the approaching peak time at the tool shop. The topic transitioned easily to commerce and climate predictions, but I could sense Mom's resentment radiating from her side. Mom cornered me in the kitchen post-meal, as the guys assembled in the lounge to discuss sports, and the ladies started removing plates. Emily was at the basin, systematically washing dishes, but I could tell she was listening. Sarah, I must discuss something with you, Mom said softly. Reverend Hayes indicated there could be some mix-up regarding your gift this year. I set down the serving dish I'd been wiping. What sort of mix-up? Well, evidently the sum that arrived was below what the congregation anticipated from prior years. Mom's tone had adopted that careful, deliberate manner she used when about to request something she knew I'd resist. Mom, I provided the identical amount I offer annually, $15,000, just divided into 4 installments instead of a single payment. Emily glanced away from the basin, her expression completely impartial. Perhaps there was a financial glitch or similar. I doubt it, I responded quietly. I can review my account records, but I'm fairly certain all was processed right. Mom exhaled, laden with parental letdown. The issue is dear, the congregation truly requires those funds for the new meeting space. Building expenses have increased, and Reverend Hayes is relying on our household's ongoing backing. Our household's backing? Well, yes. The Thompson household has always been noted for our charity. Your dad and I have been donating to the congregation for 3 decades. And when you began adding, it truly signified something to Reverend Hayes. It demonstrated our principles were being handed down. I sensed something cold form in my stomach. Mom, are you implying the congregation believes Dad is providing my gifts? The pause extended too far. Emily had grown very motionless at the basin, and Mom's features had taken on the flat, empty look she used when ready to deceive. It's not about who receives the praise, Sarah. It's about the household appearing unified in our devotion to the congregation. But I issue the payments. My name appears on the pledge documents. Yes, but you utilize our location, since you relocate frequently. And Reverend Hayes knows you're our child, so obviously he links it to our household's total contributions. The elements were starting to align in a manner that made me nauseous. Mom, does Reverend Hayes assume you and Dad are donating $25,000 yearly rather than 10? Her face colored faintly. I failed to see why the exact division is relevant. What counts is that Faith Assembly gets aid from devoted households. It counts because it's my funds. And if others believe it's from you, then you're receiving acclaim for my charity. My voice increased, and I could observe Emily throwing anxious looks toward the eating area, where the remaining relatives were still assembled. Don't be overly theatrical, Sarah. No one's taking anything from you. We're all members of the same household, striving for identical objectives. Are we? Because it appears you've been allowing folks to think you're more charitable than you are, using my pledges to enhance your standing at the congregation. Mom's features hardened. That is totally unjust. Your dad and I have been loyal participants of faith assemblies since prior to your birth. We nurtured you to comprehend the value of returning. If you're abruptly worried about obtaining individual acknowledgement for your pledges, perhaps you should review your intentions. The charge struck like a blow. Here I was, attempting to clarify why my pledges were being attributed to my parents, and I was being charged with egoistic reasons. This isn't about acknowledgement, I replied, my pitch strained with contained fury. This is about truthfulness. If Reverend Hayes thinks our household is providing $25,000 annually, and you're not fixing that notion, then you're misleading. How dare you charge me with misleading? Mom's voice had turned perilously soft. After all we've provided for you, all the principles we've aimed to embed, this is how you address your mom. Emily pivoted from the basin, her hands still wet. Maybe we should all relax, it's Easter, and relatives are more essential than finances. It's not about the finances, I stressed. It's about the ethic. The ethic? Mom's voice elevated now. The ethic is that you back your relatives and your congregation without tallying points. The ethic is that you're thankful for the favors you've obtained instead of behaving like some sort of casualty. I'm not behaving like a casualty. I'm requesting honesty regarding where my funds are directed and who's receiving acclaim for it. Your funds? Mom echoed the terms as if they were distasteful. All you possess because your dad and I reared you properly, funded your education, aided you when you chose to labor for minimal pay at some charity instead of securing a proper career. And now you're concerned about obtaining acclaim for your pledges. The injustice took my breath. I had financed my own college via grants and debts. I'd never sought their money as a grown-up. I'd been pledging to their congregation for 6 years, anticipating no return, except that the funds go where I intended. I'm not seeking acclaim, I clarified, my voice breaking. I'm requesting you to cease claiming acclaim for something you didn't perform. And that's when she hit me. The strike arrived so swiftly that I didn't anticipate it. I was positioned by the kitchen surface trying to express my perspective when abruptly my face stung and my ears buzzed. The noise reverberated through the kitchen, like a blast. Emily uttered a sharp breath. The dialogue in the eating area stopped. I could hear seats scraping on the ground as individuals tried to investigate what occurred. I remained there, one hand lifting automatically to feel my face, gazing at my mom in complete astonishment. She hadn't laid a hand on me in the past 28 years. She was inhaling rapidly, her face red with anger and perhaps shame. "Don't you ever speak to me that way again," she ordered, her tone low and venomous. "Not in my home, not before my relatives, you thankless, egotistical little brat." The terms lingered between us, like toxin. I could hear steps nearing from the eating area and voices asking if all was fine. But all I could consider was the expression in my mom's eyes. It wasn't purely rage, it was icier, more deliberate, as if she viewed me as a barrier to be surmounted rather than a child to be cherished. I collected my bag from the surface where I'd placed it before. My hands were surprisingly firm, but I could sense a shake starting deep in my torso. "I'm departing," I stated calmly. "Sarah. Hold on." Emily extended toward my arm, but I retreated. "No, I'm finished." I walked past the eating area, where my full extended relatives sat frozen in their seats, utensils midway to their lips, eyes broad with shock and discomfort. Uncle Robert tried to rise, but I gestured no. "Joyful Easter all," I said, my pitch surprisingly steady. "Thanks for the meal." I exited through the main door and took measured strides to my vehicle. I could hear calls behind me, shouting my name, but I didn't glance back. I entered my Toyota, ignited the engine, and drove off from Oak Avenue for what I believed would be the ultimate occasion. It wasn't until I reached 3 streets distant that I started weeping. Not the exaggerated sobbing kind of weeping you observe in films, but the quiet, persistent tears that happen when you realize something basic has shifted in your life and there's no reversing. I drove to Maria's housing complex and lingered in the lot for 10 minutes, trying to compose myself sufficiently to describe what had transpired. Maria Gonzalez had been my nearest companion since university. She was the sort of individual who would abandon all plans to assist you in moving or deliver you broth when you were ill. She served as a local welfare officer, so she understood the worth of relatives along with the damage that relatives can inflict. When she answered her entrance and noticed my expression, she posed no inquiries. She just drew me indoors, brewed some herbal drink, and paused for me to locate the phrases. "She struck me," I eventually whispered, perched on Maria's sofa with a cup of lavender infusion to heat my palms. My mom truly hit me because I doubted if she was claiming praise from my congregation pledges. Maria's brown gaze flared with anger. "She did what?" I narrated the whole incident to her, starting from the tense discussion in the early hours and concluding with Mom's palm connecting to my face. Maria heard without cutting in, her look growing stormier with each element. "Sarah, that's not merely about funds or acclaim, that's about dominance. She's been utilizing your charity to elevate her own position. And when you confronted her about it, she turned aggressive. I continued to believe I must have uttered something incorrect, or pressed too firmly. No," Maria answered resolutely. "You posed fair inquiries regarding your own finances. Her response reveals all you need to know about her intentions." That evening, I remained at Maria's, resting on her settee and trying to process what had occurred. My device vibrated with messages from Emily, each stating something such as, "Mom is truly distressed, and you ought to express regret." Nothing from Mom directly, and nothing from Dad. Monday dawn came overcast and rainy, which suited my disposition perfectly. I headed to my job at the Springfield Household Support Hub, and my role managing outreach for the Displaced Assistance Initiative seemed like the most genuine activity I'd ever pursued. I passed the day crafting funding applications and refreshing the online site, appreciative for tasks that didn't demand me to pretend all was fine. Reverend Hayes phoned on Tuesday midday. I was examining data tables for our forthcoming donation campaign when my office line rang. The display showed Faith Assembly Church, and for a short moment, I considered diverting it to messages, but interest prevailed, and I picked up on the fourth tone. "Sarah Thompson here." "Sarah, this is Reverend Daniel Hayes from Faith Assembly. I trust I'm not interrupting at an inconvenient moment." His manner carried the refined cordiality that religious guides cultivate over decades of spiritual guidance. But an undertone made me straighten up in my seat. "Greetings, Reverend Hayes, how may I assist you?" Well, I wish to connect directly concerning a somewhat sensitive issue. It appears there might have been some mix-up about your household's pledged dedication for this year's expansion initiative. I sensed my abdomen sink. Following all that had happened on Easter, I had no desire to engage in this dialogue with my household's minister. What sort of mix-up? Our logs indicate that the Thompson household committed $25,000 for this year's construction drive, but we've only obtained $15,000 to date. I aim to verify if maybe there was a postponement with the leftover amount, or if there were any concerns I ought to know about. The statement hit me like icy liquid. Reverend Hayes, I believe there's been a misconception. I contributed $15,000, which is my yearly offering. I've never committed $25,000. There was an extended break on the opposite side of the connection. I understand. Well, maybe I should explain. When your mom and I conversed about the expansion fund earlier in January, she suggested that the Thompson household would be boosting their overall offering this year. She noted that you had prospered economically and were keen to donate more. Liberally. My fingers clenched around the receiver. My mom informed you I desired to provide additional funds. She praised your devotion to the congregation and your wish to emulate your parents' tradition of liberal donating. I recall her precise terms were that you grasped the significance of yielding for divine purposes. I shut my lids and attempted to absorb what I was perceiving. Not only had my mom claimed praise for my offerings, but she had allegedly assured the congregation extra funds, without discussing it with me. Reverend Hayes, I must be extremely explicit about an issue. I offer $15,000 to Faith Assembly each year, and that's my individual choice, and my individual finances. My parents donate independently from their own resources. If my mom implied that I would be offering more, she was incorrect. Another uncomfortable hush. I value your explanation, Sarah. Nevertheless, I do trust you'll comprehend that the congregation has undertaken obligations based on the assurances we gathered. The building firm is relying on these resources, and we've already needed to secure a borrowing to bridge the gap. The remorse inducement was so evident it was nearly insulting. I grasp that financing is crucial, but I can only account for what I genuinely assured, which was $15,000. Certainly. I wouldn't aim to coerce you, but I do ponder if maybe you could reflect on whether the Lord is summoning you to expand your belief via heightened donating. Your parents have perpetually been such splendid models of yielding charity. Once more, my parents were presented as the standard, with the insinuation that I was deficient if I didn't match their asserted level of charity. Except I was starting to doubt that their fame for charity was largely owing to my inputs. Reverend Hayes, may I inquire something? When you consider the Thompson household's complete yearly offering, what figure emerges? Well, I dislike debating particular figures, but your household has reliably been among our most liberal patrons. I think the sum has been approximately $25,000 to $30,000 yearly. My parents provided $10,000, I provided $15,000. The calculation was simple, but Reverend Hayes had been convinced to presume it was all attributable to Mom and Dad's altruistic present, instead of realizing that over half was my own input. I believe there might have been some misinterpretation about how our household's offering is organized, I mentioned softly. My offerings are distinct from my parents' offerings. We're not offering as one entity. I comprehend. Reverend Hayes appeared baffled now. Your mom always depicts the household inputs as a cohesive dedication. She's expressed so elegantly about how your dad has labored diligently to sustain the household, and how that permits all to donate liberally to divine purposes. The image grew sharper and more aggravating with each passing second. Mom not only claimed praise for my funds, but she also fabricated a tale where Dad was the sustainer, enabling all others to be charitable. Meanwhile, I was employed full-time and offering from my own earnings to a congregation where I was scarcely recognized as a distinct person. Reverend Hayes, I must define my stance. Moving ahead, I'll be determining my own offering choices separately. If there were any assurances given in my name without my awareness, I can't be accountable for those. I grasp your viewpoint, Sarah, although I confess I'm rather astonished. Your mom expressed so fervently about the household's collective aspiration for aiding the congregation's development. My mom doesn't represent me regarding my economic choices. The statements emerged firmer than I had planned, and I could sense a change in Reverend Hayes's manner when he replied. Naturally not.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.
I definitely didn't intend to intrude. However, I do trust you'll contemplate whether you might discover it within your spirit to aid us during this challenging circumstance. The expansion fund is so near its objective, and each cent counts. I'll ponder it, I answered, fully aware of what I intended to state. Thanks for contacting Reverend Hayes. Thank you, Sarah, and kindly convey my best to your parents. Your mom noted that Easter meal was delightful. After disconnecting, I remained gazing at my display without perceiving anything. Easter meal was wonderful, up until Mom hit me for doubting her integrity concerning these offerings. The reality that she had discussed Easter with Reverend Hayes as though it had been a cheerful relative assembly felt like an additional stratum of deceit. I launched my portable computer and entered my digital banking. There it appeared, my scheduled 4 times a year offering of $3,750 to Faith Assembly Church, executed via the March allocation. I captured an image of the exchange and then scrolled through prior periods. Each transfer always punctual, and in the precise sum. Then I conceived another idea. I launched a fresh internet window and navigated to the Faith Assembly's site. Most religious groups enumerate their major sponsors in annual summaries or bulletin recognitions. I located what I sought in the prior year's oversight document, a roster of households who had offered over $10,000, sorted by contribution tier. The Thompson household appeared in the $25,000 group, not Robert or Elizabeth Thompson, not Robert Elizabeth or Sarah Thompson, simply the Thompson household. As if we constituted some form of monetary unit where personal inputs were insignificant. I felt queasy. For 6 years, I had steadily provided funds to a faith that didn't even acknowledge me as an entity. Each cent I supplied was integrated into my parents' fame, permitting them to be celebrated as prominent benefactors while I remained invisible. I reached out to Maria during my midday pause because I required to review what I had uncovered with someone who could assist me reason clearly. That's monetary deception, she responded immediately after I outlined the call. Perhaps not lawfully, since you did approve the offerings, but morally, it's entirely improper. What's truly troubling me is that Reverend appeared truly shocked to discover that I determined my own offering choices, as if it had never dawned on him that I could be an independent individual with my own connection to the congregation. Because your mom has invested years portraying you as a prolongation of their household group, instead of a grown-up with your own independence. It's a typical manipulation strategy. I keep questioning if I ought to have anticipated this. There were indicators like how Mom always desired to know when I'd executed my offerings, or how she'd referenced my charity to other congregation participants. Sarah, you relied on your mom to be truthful about something as fundamental as where your funds were allocated. That's not gullible, that's standard. The reality that she breached that reliance discloses everything about her nature and nothing about your discernment. That midday I composed an electronic message to Reverend Hayes. I maintained it straightforward and businesslike, stating that I would persist in offering $15,000 yearly as arranged, but that any extra assurances made in my name were not allowed and would not be fulfilled. I also asked that future communications about my offerings be directed to me personally rather than via my parents. I did not dispatch it right away. Instead, I preserved it as a preliminary and opted to rest on it. But that night my device began sounding. First, it was Emily. Sarah, Mom is truly distressed. She states you were impolite to Reverend Hayes and caused the household to appear poor. I was truthful with Reverend Hayes regarding my own offerings. If that caused anyone to appear poor, perhaps they should inspect why. Can't you simply express regret for the sake of household unity? Express regret for what? For not providing funds I didn't vow to provide? You understand what I imply. Mom's been weeping throughout the day. The coercion was so clear it was nearly amusing. Mom assaults me, deceives about my offerings, is exposed in her deceit, and am expected to express regret to improve her mood? Emily, did you realize that the congregation assumes Mom and Dad provide $25,000 a year rather than $10,000? I don't actually focus on those particulars. Well, you ought to. Because if they're claiming praise for funds they didn't provide, that impacts the entire household's standing. Why does it count who receives praise? We're all relatives. That term surfaced again. We're all relatives, as if being linked somehow removed the need for basic truthfulness and regard. It counts because it's deceiving Emily. It counts because I labor diligently for my funds, and I should decide how it's recognized when I donate it. You're being extremely egotistical about this. I terminated the call. 20 minutes afterward Dad contacted. His method was distinct, more appeasing, but still directed at persuading me to yield. Sarah dear, I believe there's been a major misconception here. Your mom never intended to claim praise for anything you've accomplished. Dad, Reverend Hayes informed me that Mom assured I would boost my offering this year without consulting me beforehand. How is that not claiming praise for my funds? She was merely attempting to demonstrate to the Reverend that our household is devoted to the congregation. Occasionally she becomes a bit zealous about these matters. A bit zealous? She permitted the congregation to think you two were providing $25,000 a year when you're really providing $10. There was a drawn-out break. How did you know the amount we provide? The query surprised me. I didn't until I began assembling the components. Reverend Hayes mentioned the Thompson house. Provides $25,000 to $30,000 yearly. I provide $15, so I calculated. You calculated we only provide $10? Dad's tone had grown chillier. I didn't calculate anything critical about it, Dad. $10,000 is charitable, but it's not $25,000. And allowing people to believe it is turns into an issue when they begin anticipating more. Your mom has committed her existence to that congregation, Sarah. She assists in every group, arranges most of the communal gatherings, and delivers food to every household in distress. If the Reverend wishes to acknowledge our household's total input to the community, that encompasses more than merely funds. He was accurate about Mom's volunteer efforts, but that wasn't the matter. I'm not doubting Mom's dedication to the congregation, I'm doubting why my economic inputs are being merged into your fame instead of being recognized as my own selection. Because you are our child, and we have educated you to be charitable and devoted. Because when you offer to the congregation, it mirrors the principles we embedded in you. But I am not a youngster anymore, Dad. I'm 28 years old, and I possess my own employment and bond with my beliefs. When I choose to contribute funds, that is my determination. And we're pleased with that determination, we have never indicated otherwise. So why does Reverend Hayes think you are the one making yields to allow everyone else's charity? Another interval of quiet. I believe you're interpreting too much into informal dialogue, Sarah. Am I? Because Reverend Hayes emphasized how diligently you labor to support your household, which permits everyone to contribute freely. That is not informal dialogue, Dad. That's a particular account about who is responsible for the funds. Look, your mom is distressed and bewildered by all of this. She struck you and regrets it. Can't we merely leave this in the past and proceed as relatives? There was the nearest semblance to a recognition of what had transpired on Easter, enclosed in a plea to disregard. That is not informal dialogue, Dad. That's a particular account about who is responsible for the funds. Look, your mom is distressed and bewildered by all of this. She struck you and regrets it. Can't we merely leave this in the past and proceed as relatives? There was the nearest semblance to a recognition of what had transpired on Easter, enclosed in a plea to disregard it and feign all was okay. Dad, she didn't merely hit me, she charged me with being thankless and egotistical for posing sincere questions about my own funds. And now she's asserting that I was impolite to Reverend Hayes when all I did was clarify that she cannot create economic duties in my name. She is your mom, Sarah. She cares for you. Care doesn't grant someone the authority to deceive about my funds or assault me when I protest. You are not impeccable, you know. Perhaps you should enter these discussions with a tad more modesty. I disconnected from him as well. By Thursday, the coercion effort was fully active. I got messages from 3 various aunts. All versions on the motif of relatives are more vital than funds, and your mom is devastated. Uncle Robert phoned to state he wasn't aware of all the specifics but wished I would contemplate the larger view. And my cousin Mia contributed with a thoughtfully phrased note about mercy and advancing. The reality that I had been bodily attacked for questioning my own offerings didn't appear to count as pertinent data. What affected me the most was that nobody requested my version of events, as if they all presumed I had committed some error and needed to express regret. Friday midday I dispatched a message to Reverend Hayes. That night my device rang once more. This time, it was Mom. Sarah, Elizabeth Thompson, I cannot fathom you would humiliate this household the way you have. There was no greeting, no remorse for attacking me, no sign that we would have to address what had occurred, only instant offensive mode. Hello, Mom. Don't you greet me, hello, Mom. Reverend Hayes contacted me today. Profoundly worried about your message. He stated you were demanding unique gratitude for your offerings while declining to fulfill the household's assurances. That was not what I expressed whatsoever. He states you guaranteed him you wouldn't be accountable for any pacts made in your name. That's precisely what you expressed, because you assured him funds without checking with me first. Months later, I stood at the Springfield Family Aid Center, watching families move into permanent housing we'd helped secure. My donations to Faith Assembly continued, but now under my name, supporting community outreach programs I believed in, like food drives and youth mentorship. The church board invited me to join their transparency committee, ensuring donor contributions were accurately recorded, a small but meaningful change. Mom and I haven't fully reconciled, but we've had tentative talks. She's starting to see my perspective, though it's slow. I've learned that standing up for truth, even when it's hard, doesn't just protect you. It can spark change for others too. My faith, once tied to my parents' expectations, now feels like my own. I'm not just a Thompson family daughter, I'm Sarah, making a difference on my terms. Hey, if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and share your thoughts below. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family expectations? Let's talk about it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of courage and truth. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more twists and videos, and keep watching Reddit Tales Times for daily dose of stories.